Tonight we have a hero. We have a member of our organization, so he's one of us. And I did a little research, and I noticed that in the Tallahassee Democrat, which I very rarely get or read, by the way, but they asked everyone their opinion. I don't know if you looked at that. Guess who the last person's opinion they asked? I happened to notice that. It wasn't by accident. But I was taken back by his comments. And he said he's been doing this and fighting for our community for 10 years. Too much of his time. I've asked him to speak as long as he would like to, and then answer questions asked for. So now I'd like to bring up our hero, Dr. Erwin Jackson.
Brought a couple props. People always like props. I'm going to try to tell you some new things that you haven't read in the newspaper or heard anywhere else. First of all, I know they did recognize my wife, and that's very important. There's two women here I want to recognize. First is Stephanie. When you decide to go up there and take on City Hall and make it so public, and Stephanie, I asked that she stay at home because I didn't want her taking the hits that I was going to be taking. Didn't know it was going to take 8-10 years. But every night I was speaking, she was at home watching, me getting kicked in the head. Called a liar. Called her this, called her that. Called a whole host of names. So anyway, I appreciate her so much because that was the only safe haven, and that's critical. The second woman is, everyone knows, is Judy Davis. She's been one of my all-time supporters from 10 years ago, and was always encouraging in the things I did. I would disagree with the president. I never interrupted the city commission. I've always found, I'm a fairly big guy, and I've always found if you're very polite and you talk quietly and you lower your voice, they want to hear what you have to say, and they pay more attention than someone yelling. So that's worked out well. And as far as you were talking about closing a mic down, they did that also one time when I was talking about the bad behavior. And as soon as they had the mic, they installed the mic for my behalf, so if I said something they didn't like, it was in with the mayor, and he could just click a button and it silenced me. So we had a big showdown over that because it was my 3 minutes. Legally, they can't have me if I'm talking nicely. Now, I can say some awful things, some awful, truthful things to you quietly, and they don't like it. So I called the attorney, and we got the ACLU, and within probably 2 weeks, they understood the error of their way. I started calling it the kill switch. John Marks implemented the kill switch on me, and the media loved it. So within 2 weeks, we got rid of the kill switch, and I think it's only been used once, and that was on me. What I want to do is I want to give you some information, comment on Scott's, the crime family, the charges, the actual sentencing that we all have a lot of comments on, give you a little update on J.T. Burnett, the trial, and what happened behind the scenes on that. chat with you briefly, very briefly, about the sentencing, and then we're going to talk about what's next. Because I will tell you, if you read this same article that the president talked about, all these politicians, we had Ziffer, and we had Daley, and we had Goad, and Diane Williams-Cox. She's still afraid of Scott Maddox. I need to talk with her. She had no comment. Okay? Everyone agreed. It's over. The crime's over. The one guilty person or two guilty people, now three has been found guilty. Let's go back to the way it was. This is over. This is bad publicity for Tallahassee. Well, I can tell you, as I've told the reporter who was here and the Democrat and anyone who listened to me or on my Facebook, we're closer to the beginning than the end. Much closer to the beginning. I also have to throw in a disclaimer. My attorney gets nervous. I'm not get as nervous as he does, but I do want to make sure everyone in here knows that I've spoken about a number of things for 10 years that no one agreed with. I didn't have a letter sent from Scott Maddox to me saying he's a felon and he has these contracts and he's stealing for the public. I didn't get a letter from J.T. Burnett or anyone else. What I did is I did a lot of research myself. Steve Stewart was very helpful in getting research for me. He preferred to be in the background. I preferred to be up front taking the hits. He might be smarter than I am. The other thing is I had about 25 city employees. Once I got out there and started talking, they started feeding me documents and information, and then I made decisions of what I was going to believe. And I would go and present information to Scott and see how he responded, field testing if you want, what other people told me. And at the same time, I was talking with the FBI because I couldn't get anyone locally to get interested in Scott Maddox or John Marks, and they were very helpful. And I'm going to tell a quick little story, a short version, but I was up there and I was going to throw out the money, and what he described is absolutely correct. So I go ahead and I got $5,000 in $100 bills. My wife about had a fit. She said, well, take Monopoly money. She's pretty conservative. I said, Monopoly money? I said, you can't do that. And so I got up there and did these things. I threw the money out there. And what Scott didn't know and no one else knew is I called the FBI. I asked him if I'm legal to wear the FBI t-shirt. He said, oh yeah. I said, now I want to go ahead and I want to act like I'm bribing these people. What's a perfect bribe? But I don't want to have any problem with someone arresting me for bribing 5 city commissioners on City Hall, in the City Hall. And he laughs and he says, well, the perfect bribe is you take cash, you hand it to a city official, they have to accept the money, take possession of the money, put it in their pocket, their wallet, their briefcase, and you have to tell them, here's a bribe. This is a bribe, and I'm bribing you and paying you for fill in the blank. And ideally, you'll have that on tape. So, wow, this is tough business, catching crooks. I had no idea. So I get up there, and I got these city commissioners. They don't know what to do. And I have a woman, another wonderful woman in my life that manages my office, Jackson Properties. She kept it going for a good 2 years when I was a no-show. So I told her, to get her idea on this, I told her what I was going to do. And I said, I'll bet you that Scott Maddox, once I hand him the money, I'm going to turn around, walk back. When I get back there, I said, I'll bet you he'll take this money and the arrogance of him, he'll throw it out on the floor and be offended that someone tried to bribe him. Well, he was if you tried to bribe him on TV. And I told Ellie ahead of time when I walked back, got behind a podium, and I said, "Damn, that's the first time I've ever seen Scott Maddox refuse a bribe." And that was true. Andrew Gillum was fun to watch. Now the FBI knows what we're doing. The FBI would ask me questions. They would say, "Gee, Erwin, it would be interesting if you asked John Marks this." Well, how about ask John Marks that? Then Scott comes along. "How about this? How about that?" I said, "Well, hell, don't ask me too many questions. Let me get an ink pen. I'll start making notes." So I started writing. So what they were looking at, questions they gave me, I tried to cooperate. And then Scott would sit there and say, "Oh, yeah, FBI, yeah. But anyway, the FBI gave me the clearance and showed me how to bribe someone. And if you look at those videos, the one thing I never said was, "Here's the bribe, $5,000. I never said for what. So as long as I didn't include the for what, I'm home free. I said, "Great." Anyway, that was a good article. Where are we at? Scott's charges. He came out with 44 charges. Geez, I thought that was great. 44 charges. They only were involved in the undercover for 6 months, 7 months. And they found 44 charges? For some unknown reason, I don't have a good input or insight in this, they reduced it to 3. I was shocked by that. But even those 3 charges, wire fraud, mail fraud, both of those forms of bribery, maximum sentence, 20 years each. They also got him for failure to file his income taxes properly. And that had to do with, I took Scott Maddox to court a few times, and I had him in court regarding the house, because when he ran the last time, he came over to me, and I was supporting Steve Stewart, gave him money, so Scott Maddox, he'd invited me out to his house 10 years earlier, but he came to my office and kind of in my face and said, "Well, Jackson, I need you to give me some money." I said, "Well, I support politicians on occasions, but I said, I'm not going to support a crooked politician." And he got upset. And I said, "Scott, you live in the county. You can't run for City Hall. You can't run to be mayor." And he said, "Yeah, I'm going to take care of that. I'm going to take care of that." I says, "No, you can't. You live in the county, $1 million house in the county." Well, you know what he did? He changed things around, and he gave up his homestead exemption on the big house, and then he started living in the office building that he owned on Adams Street. And I didn't give him any money, and I told him that, "Scott," I said, "the problem is they usually say the truth will set you free. But in your case, the truth will send you to prison." I said that quietly to him in a city commission meeting. And that happened. Some of you remember one of my favorite presentations I made to the mayor and the city commission. I made because the editor of the Tallahassee Democrat was getting people confused. They were saying that they were going to support Scott Maddox for his reelection. And I'm the bad guy, that I'm lying, I'm being untruthful, I've started my own radical anti-government party. No one should listen to me. Scott said I was mentally ill. I lied. John Marks said I was a stalker. When I found the information that John Marks, when he was married and out of town, his wife took the city credit card made out to John Marks, went up to a local restaurant, an expensive one, and treated her girlfriends with the mayor's credit card. Well, John Marks said I was a stalker because a city employee sent me the information. How did I know these things? People tell me, I try to verify them. And boy, it had to be true if you look at John Marks' response. And I also found out he was out of town because of his travel logs. He was dead to rights. And thanks to that, his wife said that he was not going to run for re-election. So it all worked out very well. Now, Bob Gabordi, the editor at that time of the newspaper, big supporter of Scott Maddox, walking buddies, loved Scott Maddox, supported Scott Maddox, hated me. I decided to run in 2010 to get some publicity because I couldn't afford, didn't want to spend the amount of money it needed to get publicity. So I've tried to do some crazy things, including wearing this hat. Because I said a lot of people, unfortunately, the editor of the newspaper, several people that watch TV, get confused when you look at old Westerns. You had the guy with the black hats, and the good guys always wore the white hats. So I thought that would bring home the point I was trying to make. Now the good news is I don't need to wear a white hat anymore. And the Democrat finally had 10 years of work. This is my payoff. Right here. Maddox was unmasked. And it took me 10 years to expose him and the corrupt soul he is. And there's several others. I filed a lawsuit against Scott and trying to prove where he doesn't live and where he does live. The information I found was, yeah, he does live on Adams Street. I mean, his real home is where his wife and his kids live, and his 6 antique cars and his 2 dogs and whatever. That's out here in the county. He says they all live in his office on Adams Street. Well, we go to court, and people would say, well, why take him to court? It's an ethics court. What are they going to do? Anytime you can get an elected official under oath, it's going to be a good day. Because if they lie, it'll come back to haunt them, sometimes 6 months later, in this case, 6, 7 years later. But it came back to haunt him. In that discussion in front of a judge, what we found is Scott admitted that he sold this office building to Paige. I've never had any property foreclosed on, but if you get to a point, I might, but I haven't so far so good. You go ahead, and if you own a piece of property and can't make payments, like Scott was in a situation, he had a few rough years. He lost several elections. He didn't have a job. No one was paying him, and if you know, corruption was just down when you're not a politician. So he goes ahead and decided, well, I've got this Adams Street property. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call for a short sale. So he calls, probably the bank president at that time was Paul Sullivan, and says, I need a short sale. And the BB&T said, okay, instead of $500,000, if you pay us $250 and have someone else to take over the $250, we'll write off the rest of it as a loan loss. Well, he was thrilled. But now it has to be a legitimate arm's length transaction, okay? You know who he came out in that trial, who he used as an arm's length transaction? Who was the person that bought the office building? Any suggestions? Paige. His girlfriend of 15 years. Not the definition of arm's length. Shortly after that, the FBI, That was huge news. Now we're talking income tax evasion, we're talking bank fraud, we're talking I knew we had him that day. I knew we had him. Didn't know how long it'd take. Day after this, a ruling came out, and the judge at the time made a comment that where you live, where Scott says he lives, is where he lives. I said, what the heck kind of logic is that? Before that, we had a list of discovery items we wanted to be provided. The judge rules, no, we're in a hurry. No discovery allowed. This is Friday afternoon. Be here at court Monday morning at 10 o'clock. The trial will begin. Well, after that, she found that, in fact, he lives where he says he lives, and that's the office building on Adams Street. So that's coming back, and that was the third thing that Scott Maddox, that was the third thing that was found about Scott Maddox, and his third charge. So the two of them were robbery. The third one was Adams Street property, and there was another issue, and we're going to talk a little bit more about. They wanted Scott, they found him guilty on those three things. So it was nice. One of the three they thought was very easy to prove was the information they got from me on that trial. 2 days after the trial, I had the FBI call up and say, hey, Erwin, yep, I've been watching your handiwork in the courts the other day, and you were talking about Scott and this building. Can you tell us more about it? And I did. He said, can you send me the transcript? I said, well, yeah, I can get it. I've never ordered a transcript. Be careful when you do. I said, how soon do you need it? As soon as possible. He said, all right. I was thinking soon, and now it's 5 or 6 years later, but they wanted it soon. I called my attorney, told him to go ahead and order that transcript and make it fast. Well, they did. He said, you know, it costs a little bit more when you order it fast. And if it's the first transcript, it's expensive. The 25th transcript is cheaper. I told him, yeah, I got it for you. I said, it was like $2,000 or $3,000 for the dang transcript. The first transcript overnight. I was shocked. I'm thinking $1 a page, $2 a page. Well, so I said, look, I got it. I said, now, do I get reimbursed for this? I hear you've got a $500,000 budget to do this investigation. Well, Mr. Jackson, we're just really tight with our money. And we don't have we got a big budget. I said, okay, here's the deal. If you get Scott in prison, I'll pay the darn $2,000, $3,000 and be thankful. So he said, okay. So it worked out. They asked how much I've spent. I spent a lot of money doing this, even if I worked for free for several years. That was one of the expenses. So Scott's sitting there, and we're going to talk. He gets a 5-year sentence, but it's not only the 5 years. It should have been at least minimum 10, but it wasn't. So I would strongly thought he would get 10 years. And then he was going to talk about J.T. Burnett and spill his guts about J.T. Well, when it came to J.T.'s trial, Scott Maddox did something that was very, very surprising to me. But let's start with the 5 years. He did get 5 years. That's not enough. I agree. On the other hand, he hasn't had a lot of fun the last 3 years after he was arrested. And then when he gets out, let's say in 4 years, they got to serve 80-85% of their time. Then he's got to show up at some local office, and they do a urine test and this and that, make sure he's not using drugs, which is probably every week or so that wouldn't be very much fun. But on top of that, he lost his license. Now, I'm not feeling sad for Scott. I'm trying to put this in perspective. He had a license to be an attorney, so now there's one less attorney to deal with because he doesn't have a license. He's not a politician, so one less politician to deal with. We've got his retirement from the city was taken away. He has no future income making operation. I mean, a felon who's bribed local businesses in Tallahassee is just not a very good resume starter. And then, after all that, I watched the sentencing with Scott, and they asked people to stand up and testify, and if you're going to plead support for Scott, and you go leniency, provide leniency. And there was a few old friends that showed up, a couple people that I think are somewhat sketchy, in my humble opinion. His stepmother, who was very sweet. But there's a couple people who were absent, noticeably absent. He has two adult children. I use the term children, they're mid-20s to 30, somewhere in there. Neither one of them showed up to give any reason why leniency should be shown to their father. Now that would be the toughest penalty as a dad of two kids, two boys, 28 and 31. So anyway, that's kind of Scott. We're going to go to J.T. Burnett, and my timer went away, so I'm going to speed up a little bit. And now I will be here and answer any question you folks have once I go through this. I tell you, I'm getting a lot of personal pleasure to see this many people here, to see this group that also voted for me, endorsed me when I ran in 2010, that knew there was a serious problem. You guys were way ahead of the arch. You know, no one else 10 years ago would even consider having me speak and give me a microphone without strict time limits. So you must be a good group. J.T. Burnett. Okay, J.T. Burnett. I don't know J.T. Burnett. I've never met J.T. Burnett. I've seen his wife, but never talked with her. I was talking to the FBI one time, and the first time someone mentioned J.T. Burnett, oh yeah, I didn't give you my disclosure. My disclosure, I'm going to go back to the front. Anything I say is my opinion. It's stuff that people told me. They could all be lying. Scott Maddox could be the most wonderful, honest politician God put on this earth. I personally disagree with that. So everything I'm saying has been you're just my opinion. And that of several other people, but my opinion. So J.T. Burnett, the first time I heard his name, I was talking with a FBI agent, and none of them want me to say anything about their names. I never would. I don't even remember some of them. I've got them filed away, but and it's insignificant. We were talking about John Marks originally, so that was in the beginning. When I started talking about John Marks, we were talking about AD&E, the biomass plant, if you remember that, AD&E, AT&T. John Marks was getting rich off that. He approved a $32 or $34 million contract with Honeywell. Now, who gives out a $34 million contract? No bid. No bid. Well, the bid was already set up. So I took a lot of information that I had. I tried to get the sheriff involved, not a deal. The police chief, obviously not. The state attorney, Willie Meigs at the time, helped out with the biomass plant. These other issues, so I got frustrated, and I called the FBI, went in to see them. That was the first time I met with them, and I had a stack of material like this. I gave it to them. The FBI looks at it and says, "Who the hell is this guy?" They've heard me raising hell at the city, and I told them what I was doing, and they said, "Well, Mr. Jackson, as we look through this, what motivates you?" Usually, if we have someone who's this motivated to make someone's life miserable, it's an ex-wife, It's a bad business deal that went wrong. It was a lover's quarrel. It was something. So what gives? What motivates you? I said, it's real simple. I've got 400 or 500 college students that work very hard, and their parents, to pay their rent to go to school here. And I'm a tax collector. I charge rent, and then I take a large portion of that, and I give it to City Hall. So then when I watch people steal that money that these kids and parents have worked so hard for, it just pisses me off. The FBI looked at me and, well, Mr. Jackson, that pissed me off too. I said, good. He said, but here's what we're going to do. We're going to ask you for some information. We're going to do a thorough background search on everything about you. Within 2 weeks, I'm going to know everything. And I said, great. You do that, and if you find anything real interesting, let me know. He said he would. So they must not have found too much, because 2 weeks later they called me in. They had documented what I had said. They got bank records to show money going from every crooked politician has a bag man or bag lady. Well, John Marks, who was a bag man? Sean Pittman. Okay. Andrew Gillum, who's a bag man? Adam Corey. Scott Maddox, who was his bag lady? Paige. Well, once you understand this is how the game played, you just have to find out who the bag man is, and then that's where the money goes. Only a small-time or an honest small-time crook or a honest politician doesn't have a bag man. If you're able to go in and make contributions to a politician, they're probably legit. But when you're taking money and it has to be funneled through other groups before it gets there, that's a problem. So the FBI has information, damn good information, bank records, which I couldn't get, that document what I've said. I'm pestering the FBI, as you can imagine, and they come back and I'm saying, look, we've got everything we need. It took 1.5 years, almost 2 years. We've got everything we need. John Marks and Andrew Gillum were taking the information to the U.S. attorney, and they'll be prosecuted. Great. 8 years ago. I haven't heard that. I mean, unless that occurred and I was sleeping, but I don't think so. A couple weeks go by, then a month goes by, nothing happens. I said, okay, to the FBI, what's going on? Next week. He finally calls back, says, Mr. Jackson, you understand, the FBI documents crime. The U.S. attorney is the only person who can prosecute crime. I said, yeah, so what's the problem? The U.S. attorney, whose name is Pamela Marsh, who's no longer the U.S. attorney, I've been told, made a statement to the FBI that she wasn't going to prosecute her law partner. Now, is that going to ruin my day or what? I couldn't believe it. I finally, on Facebook, we cap off at 5,000 friends, so one of my close Facebook friends that I'd never known before sent me an email, and he said, Dr. Jackson, Pamela Marsh worked in the same law firm with Alan Katz. I said, you gotta be kidding. Alan Katz, the guy I took to the ethics court, state ethics commission, for accepting checks from the biomass company while he was a city commissioner, and he'd signed an agreement to be the attorney, the bonds attorney for this multi-million-dollar smokestack that T.K. Weatherall's wife was given 7% to be the owner of this thing, so many crimes, so many names, is that Alan Katz? And he said, yeah. And Pamela Marsh was there, working in that law firm, and John Marks, all three of them. I said, you got to be kidding me. So I do a little research, and sure enough, Alan Katz was working for the city. I raised Cain with him. He cut a deal with the prosecutors, which I hated, for the Ethics Commission. He did take the money. He had a signed contract. He was a city commissioner at the same time. But he was offered a job because he raised a lot of money for Obama. And Obama had promised him the ambassadorship for Portugal. But if there was, I think it was Portugal, but close enough. Portugal, close enough. Then that took place. He had such good ties with Obama, he says, by the way, Obama, I got a young lady here in my office. She's going to be needing a job. Well, what's her name? Pamela Marsh. So Pamela Marsh comes a U.S. attorney. And now who else is there? John Marks. Now John Marks was not very smart. I'm being very honest. He was a terrible attorney. He couldn't bring in enough money to pay his basic rent and expenses. So he was kind of thrown out, and he went to Harold Knowles. Harold Knowles' law firm. John works there for a while. He can't pay the bills there either. And guess what happens? Harold Knowles has a good idea. Harold says, John, I spent so much money paying your basic monthly fees and expenses, I can't do it anymore. You need to get a job. And the mayor didn't want to do that. But he said, no, I got a job for you. We're going to work together, and we're going to run you for mayor of Tallahassee. And your job is to funnel enough contracts back to me, and he's an attorney, to pay the expenses that you owe me. Now this is going to be a damn movie. I'm working on a book. I'm working on a book now. I mean, we've got theft, we've got corruption, we got conspiracy, we got many strippers. We've got everything in here other than a dead body. And I'm hoping that won't be me. But other than that, So anyway, that was John Marks. I didn't even have John Marks written down here to tell you about. But it's kind of, I saw the judge with J.T. Burnett. He made a comment the other day and at the end of sentencing. He said, well, for some unknown reason, the FBI decided that the city of Tallahassee was full of corrupt politicians. Now, I don't know how they knew that or if someone told them. But I do know, so I've got to write the judge a letter and let him know where this all began. But at least everyone here knows where it began. It began with John Marks. So, Pamela Marsh, I've talked with a lot of friends of mine that know her. She may be a sweet person, but crooked as hell. There's no way that if you're a U.S. attorney and this is your law partner, is there like some kind of conflict there maybe? I think so. She should have recused herself, but she didn't. She was on the other side. So anyway, that's Scott. Let's go to J.T. Burnett real quick. Something funny happened. He's in big trouble right now. Something happened. Tim Jensen, I know Tim Jensen a little bit. He's in a springtime group that we were involved for a long time. At one time, Tim Jensen told me in gist, and this is 8 years ago or something, when none of this was happening, and I was going around filing ethics complaints and whatever, and he said, Erwin, he said, you're really good for my business. And I think he was speaking about attorneys in general. So I was surprised when he was the attorney representing J.T. Burnett. And guess what he did? This was a year and a half ago. He sends me documentation. He subpoenas me to speak for the defense of J.T. Burnett. Now, everybody here has listened to me for I don't know how long. If anyone decides to leave, feel free to leave. I'd hate for anyone to leave, but I'm kind of into this stuff, as you might understand. And then we're going to have some questions, and I'll stay here. I don't care the rest of the night, tomorrow morning. I've got to be on the road by 10, so I've got all night to be here. And if you do have to go somewhere, you won't hurt my feelings at all. Thanks for coming. So Tim Jensen sends me this, and I'm saying, wait a second. I called his office. I mean, it's a formal subpoena. I've never been subpoenaed before, except for maybe a couple of student, a student disagreement or not paying rent or something. But this is like big time. And so I called his office, and I said, Tim, there's a problem here. You guys subpoenaed me. Not only that, but they sent me $48 for a witness fee, and another check for $2.50 for gas money. And I called, and I was making a joke out of it. I said, if I could help the court, hell, you don't need to pay me. I'll be more than happy to tell you what I know. But why? They sent it out as me being a defense attorney for JT. I said, Tim, I'm not an attorney, but if you're going to ask me to share my opinion, because I don't know him, I've never met him, I've not talked to his wife, I've heard some rumors I think we'll be able to document that aren't good. So if the court's into opinions, hell, I've got them, I'll tell you. He says, no. He said, I think you'll be good for the defense. Anyway, you knew something was up. That didn't make a lick of goddamn sense. So coronavirus, a year and a half later, and guess what happens? This woman, the investigator, calls me up and says, no, I'll back up. I called her. Yes, I called her. She didn't call me because I read in the paper the trial's beginning tomorrow with J.T. Burnett. And I got this old document a year and a half ago. I didn't know if it's still real, if they forgot about it, if they decided I couldn't help them or whatever. So that's what I called and asked her, and she said, no. We'll be calling you for the defense. Well, I walk in to the courtroom because I wanted to talk with Tim Jensen, and it's the first day of the trial. And I knew where he would be 30 minutes before the trial. And he was up there talking to the judge, all the attorneys there. I walk in, I had my mask on because a federal judge required me to do that. So I'm trying to get along with everybody and their rules. So I sat in the back, and I see Tim getting up, back and forth. And he turns around and sees me sitting in the back. He jumps up, goes to the front and says, Your Honor, I see Dr. Jackson is sitting in the back of this office, courthouse. Will you please direct him? He's going to be a witness of mine. And will you order that he be removed from the court immediately? And I said, Your Honor. So when I stand up, been in school all those years, when I stand up, my hand goes up. Your Honor, I got a question. And the judge wasn't going to take any of it. I said, Your Honor, I've got a question. Not now, Jackson, Dr. Jackson. Not, what about, Your Honor, I need to find out where I'm supposed to go. I said, when do you want me to be here? I'm here to, I'm just trying to cooperate. Boom, boom. Then they say, the bailiff, thank you. Bailiff, remove Dr. Jackson immediately. And Dr. Jackson, do not return to this building until you're instructed by the defense counsel. You are not allowed to be on the federal property, in front, outside, on this property at all, ever, until you're given permission from the court. I thought, hell, he was tougher on me than Scott Maddox and John Marks used to be. I said, well, what the hell is this all about? So I waited. The trial went along, and I'd call the investigator. Hey, I'm going to be leaving town for 2 days. You know, if you need me, what day? I'm going to be here this way, that day, da-da-da-da-da. We'll call you, da-da-da-da. 2 more, 3 days, a week, 10 days. People got sick, whatever else was happening. And then they said, final closing statements will be tomorrow. So they called me up, not Tim, I'm disappointed with that, but his investigator, and said, well, Mr. Jackson, we've changed our mind. We're not going to call you. Well, now you know what it was all about. I figured this out a long time ago. They didn't want Erwin Jackson sitting in that courtroom hearing everything that was said. They didn't want Erwin Jackson taking my handy-dandy little, phone, sending out my emails and tweets and giving a play-by-play analysis of what's happening, because I have nothing better to do. This is the most motivating thing I've got to do, is to be there that 7, 8, 10 days, 2 weeks. Hell, I don't care. I'll be there. And I thought, but why go? Why? I mean, how can little old me in a courtroom create a problem? I'm just sitting there. Well, Paige, the last day, Scott was going to testify in JT's trial. Paige was going to testify, and Gary Jordan was going to testify. Once they testified, I was sitting there, and there was a wrap-up, kind of, final comments were being made, and one of the attorneys reported what Paige said about Erwin Jackson. And that's kind of interesting. I've never talked with her, but I bet she has something nice to say about me. She said Jackson's presence at the city commission meetings increased the heat on all of us. That's a pretty nice thing to say. Yeah. I'm getting through to him. I wish you'd told me that 3 or 4 years ago, and I'd have really been motivated. Gary Jordan. I have this, before anyone leaves, I want to tell you about this here and your assignment, if you so care to participate. Gary Jordan gets up there and he speaks. Paige told the truth. When we sued them about the McKibben Hotel Group, Paige agreed with me. Yeah, it was just a front. It was a scam. Scott has controlled governance since day one. I lied about that. The money would come in to me, but it would always go to Scott. Okay, that's being honest. That's what I said 6, 7 years earlier, but we agree now. Gary Jordan got up there, and he had something nice to say about me also. Gary Jordan says, the prosecuting attorney said, why, Mr. Jordan, did the McKibben Hotel Group, who wanted to go into competition with J.T. Burnett across the street, and Scott wasn't going to allow it, J.T. paid $100,000 to Scott to kill that idea. He didn't want the competition. He took the $100,000. The McKibben Hotel Group took about $50,000. JT gave $100. McKibben paid $50. And the question was, why did you take the $50,000? And why did Scott call you up and ask you to accept this money and funnel it through the Zachary Group, which is a closed, know-nothing entity that's owned by Gary Jordan? So it goes from the hotel, McKibben Hotel Group, it goes over to the Zachary Group and Gary Jordan. Then under oath, he says, well, and I took that check and immediately put it in the account of governance. And then governance took the $50,000 and went to Paige, and Paige sent the money to Scott Maddox. Now, when all that goes on, you know there's something not legit with this transaction. Well, I was standing up there 7, 8 years ago telling them that's exactly what was going to happen. And so Gary Jordan, in reflecting on his criminal activity, they asked, why was all this going on? Going through circles. Regarding McKibben and this $50,000, Gary Jordan said, the purpose of that was to minimize the target on our back because of Dr. Jackson. If Dr. Jackson found out, could document that we were funneling money to Scott Maddox, or it was going directly to governance, that I wasn't going to buy that. But when they sent it to another company and then it came back, I didn't realize at the time that it went to another front company. I was convinced the money was going to show up at governance, and it did, and then it was going to go to Scott, and it did. So Gary Jordan was telling the truth at the very end. Paige was telling us the truth. Scott got this huge reduction in all these sentences, and he was supposed to get up there and tell the truth. Well, he got up there, and I think he's been thinking about not having a license and how's he going to make a living. The only guy he knows that might help him out has several $100 million at this time from True Leaf stock, and that's JT. JT doesn't like him very much. JT said in court that Scott was always trying to make it with his wife, and that didn't, work out very well. So Scott tried, and he got up there, and when he was asked to testify, he blatantly lied. He lied about what he knew about JT. The judge, even in the sentencing, acknowledged that he lied. He said he told an untruth, but that's close enough to lying for me. So those things were going on, but the judge said he didn't feel that he intended on lying. Well, so I disagree with the sentence, but the good news is this. When they had the J.T. Burnett trial, they used at least 2 and maybe 3 of my 3-minute presentations I made at City Hall. So can you imagine how painful that would have been for Scott Maddox in particular to hear and see that, or less so J.T. Burnett. But all this nonsense, all this lies, all this stuff that's untrue was now being used in a federal court against Scott and J.T. The J.T. right now, there is a video, I tried to get it, I really wanted to have it for you guys. There's a video of J.T. Burnett in a hotel room in Nashville that the FBI has. I saw it on the only day I was allowed to show up in trial, the closing arguments. It had had J.T. Burnett sitting there, had Mike Miller, the undercover FBI there, and they're going back and forth, and the FBI guy's pushing pretty hard. Look, man, I got this project, it's a $20 million project. I got to make sure it works. What can I do to make sure that this thing goes through like it needs to? J.T. Burnett gets tired and he says, okay, look, I'll tell you what it is. Here's how business is done in Tallahassee. You take $20,000 a month and you pay Scott Maddox, and then you won't have any problems. He said, it doesn't matter, they're all paying Scott Maddox. And once you start paying Scott Maddox, don't ever stop. Because he'll want revenge. Well, so it was probably a 1.5-minute tape that should be played in every school in Leon County, because that's what we've been looking for. That tape said everything I've been saying in only a 1.5 minutes. So I'm trying to shorten things up a little bit. The good news, a few days ago, so J.T. Burnett, he was charged 2 counts of mail fraud. Those were both checks that were written. J.T. Burnett said for the undercover agents to go ahead and write 2 checks. They were, I believe, $10,000 apiece. Each of those checks is mail fraud. Each of those maximum sentence would be 20 years. 20 years. That's 2, that's 40 years. He engaged in extortion. 1 count, 20 years. He used a phone in a commission of a crime. 5 years. And he lied to the FBI. 5 years. So 20, 40, 60, and 10 is 70 years max. He won't get that, no doubt. He'll go ahead and he'll have time that you can serve certain sentences at the same time and this and that. But he's motivated because 70 years you don't even want to think about if you're in his position. And so he's been talking. I've been told by some folks that he's been very helpful, that he told the FBI, the U.S. Attorney, that he has a lot to share with anyone interested, and he's looking for some help on the sentencing. I guess they all do. They asked him, what 2 names do you think you could help us with? He gave 2 names. Who do you think the 2 names are? Want to take a wild guess? Andrew Gillum. Who said that? Okay, Andrew Gillum is one. Not Sean Pittman. Not Adam Corey. Adam Corey's going to be able to walk from this whole thing. He's done great. No, the 2, you've got one of them. Andrew Gillum, and the second one is John Marks. Now that surprised me because that's 10 years ago, and I thought there was a statute of limitation. But this person said, no, it's not. The statute of limitation doesn't start when you commit the crime. The statute of limitation starts when the FBI discovers the crime. So they have another 1.5 years to deal with John Marks, which is going to be tight. But also, they told me that, and there may be a few things that you don't even realize, Mr. Jackson, that John Marks has been involved with over the last few years. So, I know he's been spending a lot of time over in Quincy, and he's got the Honeywell deal working in Quincy, and there's some other stuff. There's this black TV station he's been involved with. So, I don't know. But there's more to the story. Okay, so that's J.T. Burnett. He's helping a lot, and we appreciate that. And now I'll back up one thing. I'll throw this out there because I think it's important. With J.T. Burnett, first time I heard his name, I said, I was talking to an FBI agent, and he asked me if I know J.T. Burnett. I said, I never heard of him. He says, well, the SBA, Small Business Administration in Washington, was telling the SBA, was telling the FBI in Washington about a guy that's named J.T. Burnett. And he said, when you're back down there, because after John Marks, they left. The FBI left. Scott's all pumped up. Hell, we showed them. Local boys handled them, a big defeat to the FBI, and he was thrilled. They left, and about 2 years, they were upset. They don't like to lose. And so the FBI says, instead of coming down here looking for a problem, we're going to come down here and bring a problem. And that's where Mike Miller and all these things and a whole sting operation was put together. And that came about because Pamela Marsh didn't allow the criminal activities to be prosecuted earlier. So they felt, we've got the U.S. Attorney, we've got this, we've got that, we're home free. They came back here, and the U.S. Attorney, the SBA told the FBI, When you get down there, if you hear of a guy by the name of J.T. Burnett, keep track of him. Because he applied for either, I think they said, this is several years ago, 10, 12, 15 million, somewhere. I mean, it's a large number for some solar energy, something he was going to do.
Solar sausage.
The solar sausage. There you go. That's worth 15 million. And lo and behold, before it even got started, they sent him the several million. JT brags about he had like 55 or 60 companies. Well, he got 5 of them that he controlled. And here's his main company right here. So the main company goes ahead and gets 15 million and gives this guy 3 and this company 3 and 3 and 3 and 3. Hell, there's 15 million. How much money does this company have left? 0. Guess what company filed bankruptcy? The sausage plant company. Now, the SBA is still looking for their 15 million. It was never paid back. Well, they're still looking for it. And that's when the FBI came down the second time. It was not only this stuff here, but they want some clarification on what happened to the millions that was given to J.T. Burnett. Now, what did he do shortly after that? He found several millions of dollars, probably 12 or 15 of them, because these 5 companies were sucked back to him, and he started True Leaf. So that's the beginning of True Leaf, which is now worth, I looked it up online, I think he and Kim's net worth in stock is $300 or $400 million. Now they tell me that if they can prove that this money wasn't paid back, I think they probably can, anything that money was used for to purchase anything of assets or value, like 400 million in True Leaf stock, would be clawed back by the federal government. So that's going to be more. Okay, it was real strange, the sentencing. I was in there, they brought in these other people. You have all these friends. Scott's sitting up there in the front, Paige behind him. They're turning around and I'm right behind him. So they look at their friends, they see me, and they're waving. Oh, hey, how you doing? People they haven't seen in 10 years. Oh, how you doing? Oh, yeah, thanks. I appreciate you coming up here and helping out. I thought that was just such a bizarre setting to do that. But anyway, and Scott got no extra penalty for lying under oath. What else is going to take place? I'm going to tell you in 5 minutes. One is I got an article from the Florida Politics. I don't know if you've seen this, but it's very interesting. Tallahassee corruption probe turns its attention to local judges. Yeah. I've told everybody, how can you do this for so long and not be held accountable? Well, this article says they're looking at judges who have a personal relationship with Scott, a financial relationship with Scott, a political relationship with Scott, and whatever other kind of relationship you can have. But they're looking at all of them. I suggested the names of 2 judges myself about a couple years ago, and so I got a little vacation going. Then when I get back, I'm going to get with the FBI and update them. But I do know the names of 2 of them. And a second thing, and I'll tell you the names if you're interested, because I don't care. Fox, I got this from Fox 5 Atlanta. Florida public corruption conviction of J.T. Burnett is linked to the winning applicant in the Georgia Medical Marijuana Award. True Leaf is growing all the pot to be sold in Georgia. But now the president is Kim, and you've probably read this story regarding our local legislator and how they worked with JT and what's his name, Palsy, brochures. They work together on that. A big problem. And I think you'll be reading more about that. That's on the hit list coming on down the road. When this money was awarded to J.T. Burnett and the True Leaf folks, it says there was 21 other companies that wanted this contract, and they've all cried foul, claiming that bribery and extortion was used to get this contract. Now, I don't know. It's probably a bad idea if you're out giving someone a big multi-million-dollar contract when the wife of the owner and the guy who started the company has been found guilty on bribery and extortion and a few other things. So I think this is going to have a negative impact on the price of stock with True Leaf, but we'll see. There's two names. Charles Dodson, he's an attorney, he just retired. I had an opportunity to go see him in trial. My trial goes back to trying to prove that Scott lives in a county and not in the state, not in the city. So we go in there with my attorney and we make our little argument, and I don't even know, I'm going to be writing an article and see if I can get in the Democrat. I think I will. And it talks about the ruling he made, and my attorney says, you can't do that. You just can't do that. So he gets up, tells the judge, you can't do that. The judge beats the gavel, says, I'm the judge, I can do it. So my attorney at CB says, let's go ahead and we got to take him for the First District Court of Appeal. We got to. I said, shoot, how much is that going to cost? A lot. It is just disappointing how expensive it is. When you're right, you still got to pay. We did. We go up there, we have 3 or 4 people, everything is put on pause, we make her case, they argue, and they said, yes, Jackson's right, you can't do this. They sent it back. Then it comes back, the next day we're in there, and he's upset that we went to the First District Court of Appeal. They don't like you going over someone's head. We're there for 30, 40 minutes, and he makes some other ruling. You know, CB, you can't do that, Your Honor. You can't do that because of da-da-da-da-da. If you don't like it, you know the way the First District Court of Appeal. Now I'm getting aggravated, you know. I said, I got several houses. If I sell 1 or 2, cover the expenses, hell, $300 or $298 won't make any difference. So judges are there, the appellate judges, First District Court of Appeal, and they rule in my favor. I said, damn, this is great. I haven't had 2 victories in a row. They send their order to the judge. And Dodson, they say, well, here's the deal. Jackson, short version, I didn't see I need to get a copy of that, but the gist of it is Jackson was right, you were wrong, and to ensure honesty, integrity, and fair justice or justice for all, we suggest, and this is the First Court of Appeal, we suggest that you remove yourself from this trial. He's gone. Now, how often does a First District Court of Appeal throw a judge out of a courtroom? That was unusual. I think there was a good reason why he did what he did, and I think the FBI will be able to prove it. He leaves then and he finds another judge to take over the case. Karen Yeavers was here in town for quite a while. I kind of liked her. I met her when I was running for City Commission in 2010. But I get up there and we're talking, and first time we met her is about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. She said, okay, the First District Court of Appeals says we got to handle this promptly. So we're going to have a court 10 o'clock Monday morning. My attorney said, wait a second, Your Honor, we have discovery items we would like to request from Scott Maddox. She says, no discovery. We're going to prosecute this Monday morning at 10 o'clock. Bring your evidence. We had some, but man, we had all these questions that we knew he wouldn't be able to provide us. And so then on Monday, we showed what we knew, and we talked with people. Like Scott's wife was there, and we asked her some questions that she clearly lied about, and we asked Paige questions, and she lied, and Scott lied, and fine. And then the ruling was, Scott says he lives there in the office building, and what Scott says is true. So Scott won. God, that made his day. He was just thrilled. Well, lo and behold, again, I get a contact from an individual that turned around and said, well, this gal, Karen Gievers, you were never going to win that, Erwin. Do you know who she is? And I said, well, not really. Don't you know that Scott Maddox was the president of the Democratic Party of the state of Florida? I said, yeah, a few years ago. Did you know who his legal counsel was at the time? Who? Karen Gievers. So when I've lost, there's been a good reason, and the FBI knows that. There's got to be something corrupt with those two minor things. But the reason we had such a terrible problem for so long is because the public wouldn't stand up. We had so many problems because he had too many attorneys, too many businessmen, too many presidents of banks that all were supporting him because it was good for them personally and their businesses. So that's the almost the end. What's next? Andrew Gillum, John Marks, I think Rick Fernandez, I think Gary Jordan. We've got judges. I think the pot business. If you want to make some money, I would suggest you might want to go ahead and buy a little bit of that, because I think it's going to tumble. And then the other thing I would ask everyone to do, the price of admission, in addition to being a member, I put this together. I've sent this out. Political corruption destroys economic progress. Scott Maddox and his crime family. Okay, Paige and Scott were members of the crime family, but Gary Jordan was there and testified under oath that he admitted to working in cahoots with these other two to extort money from a local business to raise funds to bribe a city commissioner. He admitted that. He hasn't been found guilty, but if a guy says, I've stole the money and here's how we did it, and Paige agrees and he agrees, Scott didn't have much of a comment, but he's now, Gary Jordan, going around town telling people, well, he didn't do anything wrong. They were going to the Tallahassee Chamber, was going to have him be their main speaker at the event they just had a few weeks ago, the MC for the whole weekend. I go ahead and got on the phone and called everybody I knew, including the chairman of the Tallahassee Chamber, Sue Dick. I said, how can you do this? The damn guy admitted to bribery. He admitted to this, and you're going to have him here? And they said, well, you know, everyone likes him. I said, I don't like him. And I said, I tell you what, I'm going to make sure that everybody knows what's going on. 3 days later, he was removed from being MC. Now they're happy. Okay, we helped. We removed him. I said, no. Here's what needs to happen. I have corrective actions needed immediately. I want you to take these. One, tell the Tallahassee Chamber of Commerce they should sever its ties with Gary Jordan, period. You need to contact WCTV. WCTV should immediately terminate Gary Jordan's television program called The Usual Suspects. The Usual Suspects, he's getting paid to do that, and he's lying about, telling the truth about bribing Scott Maddox, a city commissioner. And that's who we're putting on TV? No, we got to say no to that. The Tallahassee Democrat, call them. Terminate any financial arrangements they have with Gary Jordan. The Tallahassee Democrat's paying Gary Jordan for the nonsense he puts in the paper. If you like it, great. I don't want a person who's admitted from extortion and bribery of a city commissioner to be walking around and actually believing in his mind he did nothing wrong. City and county, call all the, y'all know politicians, call every city commissioner up there, because I'll be talking with them in a week or two. City and county governments should terminate Gary Jordan's registration as a lobbyist immediately. He's licensed and approved by the city of Tallahassee, a guy who admitted extorting money and bribing Scott Maddox. He's still got a license to be a lobbyist? Or how deaf can you be? And then finally, city and county governments should ensure that Gary Jordan and others who work to bribe elected officials be banned from receiving government funds indefinitely. No more sweetheart contracts with Gary Jordan. No more to Scott Maddox. Okay, we need to do that. And also, so that's what I've said here. Call these people, talk with them. I'm going to, you could take this. I've got a couple 100 or 300 over here if someone wants more to mail out. If you will take this, if you will copy this and mail it out to everyone on your list, on your email list, that'd be helpful. So I appreciate your patience.